Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Kim Chappell. I'm today's worship associate and a member of your Board of Trustees. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Lancaster. Friday was International Women's Day, and this month is Women's History Month. We are also in the Christian season of Lent, a time of preparing for the coming of Easter. Millions around the world of the Islamic faith begin the holy month of Ramadan today. The Baha'i fast began on March 2nd and will continue through March 20th. In 1990, today was declared Harriet Tubman Day by Congress, New York and Maryland, and the Episcopal Church. Here at UUCL, we come together to nourish the spirit, connect in love, and to act for justice. We welcome you this morning, just as you are, whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, however you identify. Today, you are part of this spiritual community. And if this is your first time here, may you soon discover that this is also your spiritual community. As has become our custom, let us give a welcome to those joining this service on Zoom this morning. I invite those on Zoom to turn your camera on and share a wave together. And everyone in the sanctuary, let's wave at the camera. You were well ahead of me at the back of the sanctuary to send our greetings. We welcome all ages in the sanctuary today. Our playroom in the adjoining building is open for children if parents would like to bring children there now or may leave for programming after the time for all ages. There is also a table for busy hands of all ages in the Women's Memorial Room opposite me at the back of the sanctuary. Every Sunday, it has become our practice to say a land acknowledgement to remember the indigenous inhabitants who had lived in this land before us. Mary Ann Robbins, an Onondaga and president of Circle Legacy, the Lancaster-based American Indian advocacy group, is aware of our practice here and says that it is important. But more important than the words of such statements, she has explained, are concrete actions that support those words. And that's why we continue to be in relation with Circle Legacy and continue the work of indigenous study and engagement. Many indigenous peoples will say, all are relatives. May we live into this truth and aspiration together. And now I'd like to introduce our minister, Reverend Patricia Guthmann Haresch.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for the beautiful music at the beginning. And good morning, everybody. It looks like spring has sprung. Are flowers starting to come up or bulbs shooting out at you? My favorite part, I remember when I walked to school when I was little, every day, and spring would come and all on the sidewalks would be the earthworms, right? All over the place. They're starting. This is the first spring, really, that we've been in our home, and the earthworms are everywhere. So I'm excited. I hope you are too. And I want to begin as we always begin with the chalice lighting. What I love is this chalice lighting, the words I'm going to share with you, actually come from a member of the congregation, UU Berks, right? UU Berks County, is that in Reading? Yeah. Her name is Pat Urabi Lichty, a member of that church. So our chalice words. We come together with our tired mind and bodies, with our confusion and questions, our uncertainties and fears. But we come together also with our hopes, with our past and our new ideas, our passions and our faith. We come together bringing all who we are, trusting that in gathering we will be renewed like spring, yes? And that together we can create the world that we long for. May it be so. So let us sing. Speaking of, we welcome everybody. These words actually come from a poem by the Sufi poet and mystic Rumi. Oh, you've got a helper.
I have a helper.
Okay.
Anyone else who is familiar with this tune can come up and help if they want. Test, one. There we go. We got some sound. For those unfamiliar, this is a fun tune that a lot of folks here know. I'll sing it through once so you can get it in your ear. It goes like this. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Great, you got it. Now I'm going to split the room in half. Choir friends, pick either side one or two. I'm going to sing with you, and you will be one with whoever. Who's my ones? Ones? Great. So they will be your leaders, but I'll help you get started. Get ready. Ready? Come, come, whoever you are. Come, come, whoever you are. Wanderer, worshipper, lover of leading. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, come, and come. Come, come, whoever you are. Wanderer, worshipper, worshiper, lover of leading. Ours is no caravan of. One more time. Come, come, come. Last time. Come, come, whoever you are. Wanderer, worshiper, lover of leading. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Well, it looks like our little ones are playing in the playroom, but we have a surprise in the Wonder Box. So I wonder, would anybody be interested in coming on up and hearing the story? Those who are children in spirit or in age, you're welcome to come on up. Clearly people in age who are young, yes, are coming on up. That's okay. That's okay. Now, this is the time, as was mentioned, at the beginning of Ramadan. And Ramadan is special because it is said that was the 9th month in the Islamic calendar, was the month when the Quran, the Holy Scriptures, were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, or begun to be revealed, yes? And so it's a very precious month. And so healthy adults fast during the daylight, and after sundown, everybody feasts or breaks the fast and has their first meal. So if you can imagine, you'd have to work and do everything you usually do without eating or drinking during the day. Now children get a break that often they don't need to fast until maybe 10, 11, 12 when they're permitted to fast and join in the fast. And it's a time not only to really focus on being a good person, living the moral life, really focus on things. Just imagine when you're hungry and thirsty, how that helps you focus. But also opens your heart to those who are regularly hungry and thirsty, yes? And that's what we think about with Ramadan. But I'm pretty sure there might be something in the Wonder Box related to a story that relates to Ramadan. So would anyone help us see what's in the Wonder Box? What do we got in there? Oh, what do we got?
But it was food.
Oh, yeah. Lillian was hoping for food. Oh, we got something shiny, very fancy. Oh my goodness, something very fancy. And something not so fancy. How about there? Something not so fancy. Well, the story that comes with these, surprise, right? The two jackets. The story that comes with these is, in many of the tales that you'll hear in Islam, or in the stories of Islam, we'll talk about a man who was Mullah Nasruddin, and we learn a lot through him. And this story about him comes from the time of Ramadan. And Mullah Nasruddin worked hard in the fields, right? He worked hard in the fields, and so he wore the clothes of a laborer, yes? The rough clothes of a laborer. And one day during Ramadan, he had worked especially hard. He was very dirty, his shoes were muddy, his clothes were raggedy. But he learned that the wealthiest man in town was going to welcome everyone in town for a feast. And he didn't want to be late. Nasruddin did not want to be late. So he rushed. He thought, I'm not going to be rude and be late. I'll rush over. I'm not going to go home to clean. I'll just go right there. And he went to this huge estate and knocked on the door. And the host, that fine, rich man, opened the door. And, well, he did welcome him in, but Nasruddin didn't feel very welcome. And so he went in, and nobody talked to him. And everybody there dressed in their finest, chatting and talking, and the tables overflowing with food, and everyone grabbed their food and went to a seat. But no one offered a seat to Nasruddin. And he realized, maybe I should have gone home. So he rushed home and he put on his finest coat. Yes, he put on his finest coat. And he washed, first he washed and then put on his finest coat. That's right. And he put on his hat and he put on his finest shoes. And he went to the door of the fine estate. Oh, I think I'm stuck here. I have all this stuff to get stuck. Oh, well. And they welcomed him in. And everyone said, hello, hello. And they greeted him and they talked with him. Let me help you fill your plate. And they found him a seat and they welcomed him. And he sat down and he found a big plump fig and he put it in a pocket of his coat. Eat, coat, eat. And then he found some baklava and grabbed that. Eat, coat, eat. And he kept doing this with more food and more food. And finally someone said, what on earth are you doing? Well, he said, when I came here, you weren't that interested in welcoming me or greeting me. I figured you welcomed the coat. It was the coat that you cared about. So I thought I should feed the coat. Yes? So the lesson is what? What would the... No, it isn't, George. The lesson is not feed the coat. Thank you, Lillian. Lillian said you can't judge a book by the cover, right? That come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, welcome whoever you are. We should feed you at our table, not your coat, right? Right. So let us sing again. Lead us, please. Thank you, guys.
You know the drill. Come, whoever you are.
I thought I'd see you in jeans. I don't usually.
Whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leading, ours is no caravan. Come, yet again come. Thanks, friends.
Thank you. So this is the time in our service where we go to that quiet place of prayer, meditation. You can find your breath. Breathe in, breathe out. You can make yourself comfortable in your place. Feel solid and centered. Find your heart at your center beating. And this morning I bring to you a poem from Arab American humanitarian Naomi Shabib Nye. This is a bit from her poem, Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go. So you know how desolate the landscape can be. Between the regions of kindness, Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I who you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. May it be true for you. May it be so. So let us share together some joys and sorrows and complex truths that are resting in our hearts, that are in the world today. I'm going to, for those who are visiting, I'm going to first say some joys and concerns, and then Kim will plant a stone in the sand to mark each of those. And then in a bit, I'll welcome anyone who wishes in silence to come and rest a stone in the sand as well. Another week goes by to rest a stone of concern and care for the desperate situation in Gaza, as we hear of food drops and continuing conflict. May the violence end and aid and restoration continue. A stone of care for his family and remembrance, as we learned this week that Dick Sherban died. Dick attended UUCL a while back and has remained a member. His sons are planning a memorial for Dick that will be here at the end of April. Stones of remembrance and care. Again, this week we think of Ashton Clatterbach's death. We think of his family. I know many of you know his family. So many stones of strength for his family and all the members of the community so saddened by Ashton's death. Stones of strength and hope for the LGBTQ plus community who were hit especially hard by his death. May they not give up hope and find the resources they need to remain strong. Ashton's celebration of life will be held this coming Saturday afternoon by his family. Also, stones of care and concern for those who find themselves struggling and suffering. You all know you can always call me here at the office line if you are in need of pastoral care. In today's order of service, we also included numbers for the crisis and suicide prevention lines, especially if you want to give something to someone you're concerned about who might not call here. And also, there's a wonderful resource in our UUA website for LGBTQ plus folks, and that link is in our order of service as well. I wanna do a little stone of celebration and joy. Just recently, the board signed an affiliation agreement with Heather Guerin Rice. Heather is a chaplain, and she will join Reverend Elizabeth Shuba as one of our affiliated community ministers out there, who will wear proud on their sleeve that they're Unitarian Universalist. And thank you very much, Heather. Thank you, board. And for instance, Elizabeth, if you ever have a visit at Lancaster General, Elizabeth is a chaplain there, and we'll try and make sure that she checks in with you. Our affiliated community ministers extend our pastoral care, help with rites of passage, and now you see Heather. Heather is a candidate for ministry in the UUA, and she's going before the fellowship committee next month. So another stone of our best wishes. May you carry that in your heart as you go. That's kind of our licensing board, I guess you could say, for ministers in our UUA. And a stone of celebration for all of you, because you set your clocks forward and made it. Yes, yes. As tired as you may be, thank you for showing up. So now is the time that I invite you in silence if you wish to lay a stone. And with each stone that is laid, may it be like a seed that grows a tendril of joy, of hope, of healing. Yes? You're welcome to come forward.
You are. Only on a wind of hope my heart sailed, braving mystic oceans to arrive. Those who do not leave and choose to stay reach out for what you are. Though you've traveled many roads, there's just one way, and that's the one you chose.
Today's reading is entitled My American Jihad by Seyyed Yasin's Harvard commencement speech from June 6, 2022. Excerpts. Both the Quran and the Constitution teach ideals of peace, justice, and compassion, ideals that command my love and my belief. Each of these texts, one the heart of my religion, the other that of my country, demand a constant struggle to do what is right. I choose the word struggle very deliberately for its connotations of turmoil and tribulation, both internal and external. The word for struggle in Arabic, in the language of my faith, is jihad. It is a word that has been corrupted and misinterpreted both by those who do and do not claim to be Muslims. And we saw last fall, which was 9/11, to our great national and personal loss, the results of this corruption. Jihad, in its truest and purest form, the form to which all Muslims aspire, is the determination to do right, to do justice, even against your own interests. It is an individual struggle for personal moral behavior. Especially today, it is a struggle that exists on many levels: self-purification and awareness, public service, and social justice. On a global scale, it is a struggle involving people of all ages, colors, and creeds for control of the big decisions, not only who controls what piece of land, but more importantly, who gets medicine, who can eat. So where is our jihad? Where is our struggle as we move on from Harvard's sheltering wall? Worthy adversaries are innumerable. We can turn our struggle to the war against oppression, poverty, disease, but before looking outward, we must first look inward. Before deciding what we are against, we must decide what we are for. The only way to define the inner moral force that drives our struggle is to learn through action, to get our hands dirty, to strive to see the world as it sees itself, testing the boundaries of what we think we know and how we know it, to combine our academic search for truth with a sense of empathy for our fellow humanity. On one level, it's simple. Everyone wants the same things that we do. The true American dream is a universal dream, and it is more than a set of materialistic aspirations. It is the power and opportunity to shape one's life, to house and feed a family with security and dignity, and to practice your faith in peace. As a Muslim and as an American, I am commanded to stand up for the protection of life and liberty, to serve the poor and the weak, to celebrate the diversity of humankind. There is no contradiction, not for me, not for anyone of any combination of faith, culture, and nationality who believes in a community of the human spirit. Where is our jihad? Whether on our way to an investment bank in New York or to Sierra Leone to work with orphans, Harvard graduates have a responsibility to leave their mark on the world. So let us struggle and let us make our mark. And I hope and pray that our children, our grandchildren, and those who take our seats in the years to come will have cause to be proud.
So it was my first week into a full-time ministerial internship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Asheville. And I always enjoyed driving in because we were kind of out in the country, and I would drive through the mountains. It was beautiful in the spring. It was even more gorgeous in the fall. And this particular morning, as I was driving through, probably listening to folk music, because there was a really good station there. If you ever listen, WNCW is like awesome. Anyway, I was listening to that station probably, and I started to hear on the radio a report of a plane that had crashed into the World Trade Tower, the first one. And in my mind, I was imagining like a little plane, like a little private plane, right? And kind of strange, right? And I'm driving to the church, and then I heard that the White House was being evacuated, and I knew something was up. And I imagine you all have memories of that day as well. And by the time I reached the church building, some congregants had started to gather. The staff was there, And it was kind of bizarre. I walked in from the parking lot where the fellowship hall was, and it was absolutely empty, but the TV was on. And I saw before me it wasn't a private plane. Yes, it was a jet plane. And I started to see all those scenes that we remember so well. And the staff had started to gather, and we were putting together a makeshift service for that night, a vigil. And we were going through the membership list, calling everybody. Do you know any loved ones? Are you okay? What's on your heart? We're going to have this vigil tonight. We learned of people who didn't know where their children were in New York and all sorts of things, and didn't know if it was their family member on a plane that day. And it was interesting how different people responded. Do you remember the backlash of Islamophobia that came after that moment? I was very proud that our congregation in Colorado, for a long period of time, circled and made a circle of safety around mosques in their area. Yes. And I was very proud of my congregation, because the first thing that they were saying is, we want to learn everything we can about Islam and have this make sense. So that as the student minister, one of my jobs during this time was to call up the local imam and say, we would love to invite you to come talk at the church and share with us about Islam. So few of us know anything about it. And he said, I am getting overwhelmed with requests. Isn't it a shame that it's something like this, which would have you all calling me up on? If only we had started this dialogue a long time ago, yes? He said, when things calm down, I will make myself available. But resoundingly, that's what we had learned, is that people wanted to know more and more about Islam. And so think of me, I was in seminary at that time, and there was much buzz about it. So when I share with you what I learned of Islam, it is as a seminary student, right? A Unitarian interested in world religions. I'm not a practitioner, right? I'm not a follower, but I've learned some stuff of interest that I wasn't prepared for, I didn't know. And why is it that we don't know much about Islam? Maybe some of you know more than the others, but it's a tradition that shares many beliefs and values with Judaism and Christianity, sees Jews and Christians as others of the book. Many biblical passages, many figures that you see in the Bible, you see in the Quran, which were the sayings that came to the Prophet Muhammad and someone wrote down. You find in the Quran the striving for justice and righteousness, a soft spot for the poor, and very much stressing care for the poor and the oppressed. You find monotheism, a faith in one God. If you're lucky enough, go look up the love poetry, the mystical love poetry of the mystical poets of Islam. It's absolutely beautiful. At that time, during 9/11, what was very familiar in the news media was the word terrorist, jihadist, right? It became very commonplace and running through the news and sometimes in our daily lives. As the morning reading noted by this Harvard graduate student, the commencement after 9/11, this word jihad actually has different meanings in Islam, for Muslims. At the time of the Prophet Muhammad, many will say, as you study the Quran, take the context of when it occurred. Was it in the early days of Islam? Was it in the days when they felt as a movement more embattled? And the meaning can change of things, and the text can change at those times. The notion of jihad, it literally means struggle or to strive, yes. We've come to only associate it with holy war, but many who are Muslim will say that struggle, that internal struggle to be a good person, is the greater jihad. When, about 20 years ago, when I was studying Islam and jihad, many in our society, many in the United States, thought of Islam negatively, thought most people were terrorists, had a negative concept. It's interesting, I looked back to see what research says now. Do you know, as a country, we've moved? That as a country, more people generally think better of people who are Muslim and don't assume that every Muslim is suspicious, as was the majority way back when, around the time of 9/11. But what's interesting, guess whose minds haven't changed? And I'm only telling you this because the data reveals it. Republicans, I mean, the data actually shows Republicans and white evangelicals still have a very negative connotation of Muslims. Go figure. But others will not judge someone just because they're Muslim. I thought that was an interesting piece of data. It's the second largest religion in the world. At the time of 9/11, who were we thinking of? Ayatollah Khomeini and Osama bin Laden and jihadists. Sometimes jihad in the Quran does mean a battle with others. However, if you read the Quran, and there's also the tradition of the prophets, there's all this commentary on other things outside of the Quran that's considered important. If you ever hear the word hadith, that's also a tradition that goes along with the Quran. There's restrictions about battle, that it should only be defensive and not offensive, that you should take care not to harm innocent people. That's also what you will find in the Quran and the tradition of the prophets. Dr. Tamara Hassan notes, the growth of revolutionary rhetoric is in opposition to the spirit of Islam, which actually relates to the word salam, which means peace. Islam holds human life sacred and personal culpability a matter for God alone to determine. There is a broad sympathy in traditionally Islamic lands for calls to revive the tradition, yes, as a political force, or for contemporary interpretations of jihad as a struggle to establish an Islamic state. Yet it would be a mistake to equate such sympathy with a general acceptance of terrorism or irregular tactics. Just as Christians look to Scripture for authority and try to sort out what would Jesus do, given his sayings and his actions, the two authoritative and holy sources, again, are the Quran and the Hadith, a record of the prophet's sayings, but also his actions, the revelations he understood from God. Now, the Quran and a prophetic tradition do not condone violence and terrorism, and there isn't a general acceptance of terrorism among Muslims. The word jihad occurs many times in the Quran. It's one of the basic tasks bequeathed to Muslims by the Prophet. Quote, believe in God and his messenger and strive or do jihad. in the path of God with your possessions and your persons. While Christianity at various times in history has tended to emphasize faith and belief, Islam stresses striving to act upon one's beliefs, to perform the will of God, to help the poor, to help the oppressed. In the example of the prophet and his early followers, the way you think of it is, given the unruly impulses within ourselves and the cruelty and the injustice of the world, living a moral life is jihad, is struggle. Some who interpret the Quran consider when the revelations were recorded, as I mentioned. John Esposito notices that like Jesus and his followers, when the prophet and his small band formed in Mecca, their reformist message posed an unwelcome challenge to the religious and political establishment and was met with resistance and persecution. His small minority group was under constant pressure. So in the early revelations, against these odds, the prophet's followers are encouraged to struggle, to strive, to live a straight path of God, even against those who would persecute them, to struggle to do right, even though the odds were against them. The prophet's group emigrated to Medina, hoping to be freer to live out their life of faith. And this is when some interpreters suggest the concept of defensive jihad grew. Muhammad and his followers knew they would run up against hostile tribes, get caught up in imperial warfare, and have to defend themselves. So the Quran starts to enjoin Muslims to fight only to repel oppression and tyranny. Aggressors should be treated according to the extent of their aggression, a sword for a sword. But aggression should be avoided from the Quran. And fight for the cause of Allah, those who fight you, but do not be aggressive. Surely Allah does not like aggressors. According to the prophetic tradition, the prophet forbade fighting unless all other alternatives had been exhausted. Mercy and battle were inseparable in the wars of the prophet. His army was not to lay waste to the land or kill the weak or those without a role in fighting or decision-making. His followers were to adhere to moral excellence and not copy the despicable methods of the enemy. So say the prophet and the Quran. For example, the prophet said, "Proceed with the name of Allah. Do not exceed the proper bounds. Do not act treacherously. Do not mutilate. Do not kill children." Not until the later chapters of the Quran, when the prophet is establishing a state and commanding an army, only then does jihad tend to refer to military action alone. From the Quran, charge forth on foot or mounted and struggle with your possessions and yourselves in the way of Allah. With the successful conquests and expansion achieved by the prophet's followers during the 7th century, scholars of Islam began to apply the term jihad more strictly to military action because they saw success. It was a time of establishing legislation related to warfare, just like the early church fathers and others in more recent times have tried to establish so-called just war theory based upon Judeo-Christian scripture. So-called jurists, the clerics and experts of Islamic law, were attempting to formulate an appropriate response to the socio-political realities of the Islamic public order. For this reason, a tension can be observed between the religious and the political motives for invoking jihad. The creation of a just and ethical society embodying the will of God is central to the Islamic revelation. The Quran states, "And let there be a nation calling to goodness, bidding the right and forbidding the wrong." Therefore, for some jurists, the establishment of divine rule on earth is the ultimate justification in the war in the sense of jihad. And so what does jihad mean to Muslims today? Well, just like Christians, just like Jews, not everybody thinks the same. Not every Muslim thinks the same about jihad. It's difficult to interpret from all the texts just what to think. And so it's up to each follower of Islam to study and know themselves. If they follow one imam, they might think one thing about jihad. If they follow another imam, they might think another. For Muslims, the rapid spread of Islam seemed to validate the truth of the Prophet's revelations. And it wasn't until the Crusades, where their views were challenged with European dominance and colonization, and the failure of many modern Muslim states, their doubt arose. John Esposito notes that many Muslims concluded that Western dominance and Muslim dependency were the result of unfaithfulness and departure from the path of Islam. So what do? You get more Islamic, and you get stricter about your rules, and maybe everything will be better. And sometimes that works out, and sometimes that doesn't. And this was a powerful argument to wed the practice of Islam with government and to support jihad being political and militaristic. Since some of the 20th century Islamic revivalists revived this expression of jihad as militaristic, and they spoke of the sphere of Islam being threatened, and that all lands that had once been Islamic should be Islamic again. And there seemed to be a softening of the idea that we were one with those of the book and of one family with those who were Jewish and Christian, and that there should be a softening of the heart with those. And more aggressive action was supported among some movements. After World War II, pride and hope seemed to return to the Muslim world with the creation of many of the modern Muslim states. However, the nations and the borders carved out by the West fed ethnic, regional, and religious conflicts that have threatened national unity or stability in numerous countries. Muslim monarchs and states rose due to widespread dissatisfaction and inspired forms of Arab nationalism and socialism and appeals to Arab Islamic roots. A couple of words with the nature of the Quran. We might think of it as a specific set of rules, a sort of handbook for life. Some people think of the Bible that way. Not open for interpretation. There are some segments in the Islamic world that feel that the book was shut and there should not be more interpretation. Others believe that every day it reveals itself in new ways through prayer, through discussion, through deliberation. Although considered incomplete and the final word of God, it does leave the struggle, that internal struggle of the will of God, open-ended for some. The revelations are described as guidance for the people, and the guidance offered is usually of a more general nature. Just like there's contradictions and silence on certain subjects in the Bible, many who are followers of Islam feel that's true in the Quran as well. One might be surprised to find that words such as reform, resistance, Revolution can be found among the current writings, thinkers, and the notions of jihad. Some are feminists among those who are reformers. But it's not just the Osama bin Laden types who are the reformers and those interested in reform. Many Muslims view the leaders of Muslim states as corrupt and authoritarian and oppressive. The dominance of Western culture and values in the world aren't always seen as positive influences, but by some within the Muslim world, they do like the idea of democracy and women's rights, and do like to fight for those who are oppressed. Dr. Sun suggests a spirit of revolution is at the heart of the Islamic message, calls for moral and social change, just like some would say is the message of Jesus. For Sun and also for the Buddha. For Sun, the sense of mission is what gives Islam its initial success in the world, rather than terrorism or armed revolutions. Such revival is the code word of those committed to revitalizing the political, economic, social, moral, and general cultural strength of the classical Islamic world. As Seyyed Hossein noted in his Harvard commencement speech, jihad is a word that has been corrupted and misinterpreted, both by those who do and do not claim to be Muslims. Jihad in its truest and purest form, the form to which all Muslims aspire, is the determination to do right, to do justice. We must struggle even to define what we mean by jihad, returning to a truth and a beauty at the essence of the word offers a powerful lesson, both for Islam and America. Jihad as the struggle to live a good and moral life seems to be a universal spiritual reality. Among what are considered the world's great faith traditions and religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, there is a view that the world is not perfect. For the Buddhists, it is suffering. For the Hindus, it is illusion. The cycle of life and death is to be escaped. The Jews and Christians were kicked out of paradise and are trying to figure out a way back. Muslims are warned of their own unruly impulses and the cruelty and injustice within the world. In a sense, each tradition has a path or paths of spiritual discipline or effort to reach a more perfect place or attitude. It is recognized it ain't easy being an adult, is it? Life isn't easy. The world challenges individuals to stay on the right path, to live morally and compassionately, to work towards justice, to follow the rigors of any religious tradition, or to try to live an ethical life is a struggle in this world. Recognizing such commonality and shared spiritual striving is a good place to begin together, to begin a discourse, and diffuse misperception and fear. I close with words from retired UU minister, the Reverend Dick Gilbert. When we are overwhelmed with the world and cannot see our way clear, when life seems a struggle between tedium and apathy, or frenzy and exhaustion, when today seems a punishment and tomorrow a torment, may we find the courage of patience. May we recognize courage in ourselves and our companions. This is not dramatic, nothing to elicit a fanfare that commands little notice by the world. This that is forgotten and taken for granted. Let us just learn to cope like those who live one day of pain at a time. We see the long path of suffering and do not despair. Let us think of those who inspire us by their patient courage when we are impatient and afraid. May we know such courage and quietly celebrate its presence within us and among us. May it so. May it be so. May you know courage. And let us sing I Know I Can, number 1015 in the teal hymnal.
You may rise and bow to your spirit as you are able, noting that this is verses 1, 2, and 4. 1, 2, and 4. Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. Verse 2, my sorrows heal my soul, and burdens make me strong, though troubles wait at every turn. I know I can go on. And though the journey is long, and though the journey is long, the destination is near. Give it everything. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on.
This is the time in our service when we will pass the plate and accept your offerings. You may also go to our website to make a donation online. A portion of the offering will be shared this month with Chestnut Housing. Chestnut Housing provides affordable rental housing to people experiencing homelessness because a home is the foundation of a healthy and fulfilling life. While the plates are passed, I'll be making some announcements, and the plates may now be passed. Do look to our weekly email newsletter, the Love Notes, for weekly need-to-knows and events at UUCL, as well as our Facebook page and website calendar. To sign up for the newsletter, look to our website or contact our office. Next Sunday, March 17th, our new affiliated community minister, Heather Guerin-Rice, will be speaking on covenant for the service. During that afternoon, there will be a goddess gathering in the Women's Memorial Room and workshop 2 of this year's UUA Common Read, Repentance and Repair on Zoom. Be sure to mark your calendar for Sunday, March 24th. Following the service will be a congregational meeting on the sanctuary updates, and then at 3 p.m., Alan, our pianist, will lead us on a journey through the history of jazz. Following today's service, all are welcome to enjoy coffee and tea and conversation in Emerson Hall. Board members will be present there to answer any questions you might have about the sanctuary updates, I should say. Today is also the second Sunday Yarn Over, Walk-ins are welcome to learn knitting and crocheting and hang out together. We are grateful for your gifts, freely given. And now let us read together in unison the affirmation of faith, which you'll find in the front of the gray hymnal, if you don't already know it. And first in English we will say it, and then in Spanish. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is this is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ofrenda. Este es nuestro gran pacto, el convivir unidos en paz, el buscar la verdad en amor, y ayudarnos unos a los otros.
As Kim extinguishes our chalice this morning, a reading from Anwar Fazal. We all drink from one water. We all breathe from one air. We rise from one ocean and we live under one sky. Remember, we are one. The newborn baby cries the same. The laughter of children is universal. Everyone's blood is red, and our hearts beat the same song. Remember, we are one. We are all siblings, only one family, only one earth. Remember, we are one. Peace be with you. Go in joy, go in peace, go in love.
Daun nanaish besalam. Daun nanaish be'aman.